morning, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Man, that's been a rough night. Little sleep, tooth pain is real, and then also seeing a lot of overnight setups of severe weather. Today actually might have another one, so may not be able to cover that one. We'll see what happens with that. Storms are probably going to be firing late in this area here today. I think this half of the slight risk that we're looking at for today, by the way, the northern half is going to be early in the morning, and then this half over here towards Springfield, Springfield, Missouri, and Springfield, Illinois here. That's going to be late into the evening, even into the overnight hours here. The main threat with this is wind. There also is a hatched risk for hail. Both of these are at slight risk levels, and then there is also a 2% tornado risk. We'll see this develop late in the evening. Probably not going to be able to stream this one. I actually kind of want to, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to, unfortunately, because I still have to work less. But nonetheless, though, we're looking at the setup for the day here. It kind of leans in. The trough that's set up here is a little bit more linear, but this little maximum that develops here kind of aids the development of a squall line or MCS that develops. The potential even exists for hurricane force gusts. That's why we saw the hatch risk for the wind, even though we're at slight risk levels. I do think because of the capping inversion is why we are going to end up seeing storms firing late into the evening. Because if we were to look at composite reflectivity here, storms aren't firing, but hodographs are already indicating high damaging wind potentials, particularly with D cape here, or downward cape, or downdraft cape, whichever one you want to call it. A good threshold number is 1,000 joules per kilogram. We're sitting at 1,300. This also is indicated here by the hodograph here, and it's perfect as far as directional veering direction is concerned. Because not only sometimes can you see what's going on in the lower to mid levels of the wind, with the wind in particular as far as velocity is concerned, it can also show you the storm vector itself and even the shape of the storm. But we can clearly tell that this is a linear event just based on the shape of the hodograph, and we'll be seeing most likely a southeastern motion. But as far as instability is concerned, sufficient. We're at 2,100 joules per kilogram, closing it on 22. And then we also have dew point of 66. The moisture content's pretty good. And the temperatures are going to be scalding here. 96 degrees according to this sounding here. So it's pretty crazy to see that. And then lapse rates are actually pretty high. So we may see some storms pop up a little earlier than expected here. Of course, this is the 6Z run that I'm looking at right now. Of course, this is the wrap model that we're looking at. HRRR, I'm going to be bringing that up momentarily. But interestingly enough, I think the HRRR is the one that's hottest on the inhibition here, the capping inversion. So let's go ahead and take a look at said model now. So what we have here towards 22Z, we're going to go to the same place around the same time. Just go ahead and take a look at that, and boom, look at that. Clear difference here. Much stronger inhibition here. D-cape is about the same, but just the strength of that cap alone could be enough to where we don't get much storm development here. There is a little bit of low-level contamination here, so there could be a storm already developing here too. So, question mark. This may not be a really adequate sounding here, so I'm going to try to go a little further south here just to show exactly what I mean. And this pretty much confirms it here, because there's no excuse me, I can't speak. Tooth pain. There is no contamination with this one to the same extent like that one, like that last one we're looking at, and we can clearly see that convective inhibition is still high at negative 131. Usually anything at negative 100 usually is pretty notable. So as a whole here, we'll probably move this to about maybe, let's say 20 hours here. We'll see if there's any sort of difference here. and it looks like the if anything, the cap seems like it gets stronger across this region. So like I said, two different models, two different outcomes, always makes forecasting a bit more complicated. But this is what our trough looks like. It's a lot different in comparison to the wrap. So some question as to whether or not this goes off, and if it does, just what will it entail here. So when we look at the mid-levels here, this is usually a good point of reference for a lifting mechanism at times. And I mean, we do see something early in the day, but later it's kind of abysmal at this point. Really nothing develops until like late into the evening and into the overnight here. And that's when I'm thinking you'll start to see the severe soundings. In fact, there you go right there. Strong helicity here too. As far as kinematically, nothing crazy here, but we do reach a threshold with the D cape. The minimum here is about 800. We're at 818. Also, still dealing with cap issues, but this would be a much better outcome because this would somewhat limit the threat of severe. But if it fires earlier in the day, like the wrap is trying to show us, we could have a little bit more trouble on our hands here. So like I said, model discrepancy, my favorite. Anyway, let's go ahead and lastly take a look at the low-level jet. Can't really expect too much going on here. Low-level jet is a little bit more impressive this afternoon. I did say that towards the north, the threat seemed like it was existent more so earlier in the day, and it definitely looks like that's the case. Helicities aren't incredible. In fact, 65 meters per second square isn't a lot at all, but still enough to create damaging winds. And we also have temperatures and dew points surprisingly high, because this is still in the morning time here. This is 15Z. This would be about 10 o'clock, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. And then also lapse rates are actually pretty good. D-cape again at that just past the 800 threshold, so we could see a little bit of damaging wind potential. Excuse me. But as far as tornado threats concerned, not too much to really go with there. So let's go a little bit later into the evening here. And as you can see, it really starts to taper off until about 06Z with the HRRR. A little bit later, in that same area that I was talking about a little bit earlier, that's when I think the damaging wind potential goes up. And here's even a marginal TOR sounding. This is one of the better soundings I've seen here. Even then, nothing too crazy. Also, as I've said before, inhibition is going to be a big problem with any storms that try to develop, with the way the HRRR is painting the picture right now. Also, there is a lack of surface cape too, only at 543, so we're just barely scratching the surface with severe weather potential. As far as downward cape is concerned, that's pretty high. If you have that downward cape, it's not like you need a lot of surface instability or even mixed layer, but if you're looking for anything more along the lines of a discrete cell or even tornado threat, you're just barely skimming by if it were to develop at all. Chances are pretty low, hence why the 2% exist. But that's what we're looking like as far as the kinematics are set up. We already know that our dew points here are going to be crazy. Plenty of 60s and 70s across this region here throughout the day and throughout the evening here. And really, it's the moisture that's going to allow for severe weather to develop tonight and into tomorrow morning. Just the immense moisture return of 70-degree dew points is crazy. We already know it's summertime, it's going to be hot, so that almost is like a flashpoint all in of itself. That with any kind of lifting mechanism, no matter the time, usually you can get some big storms. I wouldn't expect crazy severe numbers with this, but nonetheless, it's something to definitely look out for. I'm going to go ahead and look at the instability here, and then we're going to close this one out pretty much with the reflectivity, of course. So, small pocket instability this morning that exists across Iowa, heading into the northern parts of Illinois, north central Illinois. Then as we get into the afternoon, new area cape begins to develop, but just around the time when those storms would start to fire, a lot of this is starting to diminish here. Probably could see a few decent soundings. In fact, here's a Taurus sounding. Again, though, inhibition in play, and there's decent lapse rates. I don't think there's going to be a lifting mechanism around this region that really allows these to take off until very, very late. The decape with this is high, though, however, so if anything were to pop off here, it could get pretty intense as far as wind is concerned. Other values such as EHI, they're decent. Shear, storm relative felicity, decent numbers. Nothing that's like a world burner by any spectrum of the imagination, but nonetheless, definitely still would want to be on the lookout if you're towards eastern Kansas, just in case this cap doesn't hold up. But instability becomes more limited the later into the evening and into the overnight we get. So the southern end here, it's question mark as to how this slight risk progresses. If the cap does break, we could see an upgrade to an enhanced risk, but we'll just have to see what happens with that. And then lastly, here's a look at the reflectivity. Here's this first line of storms here. Decent damaging wind potential for this early, especially towards southern Iowa and maybe northern Missouri. And then as we go east here towards Illinois here, we start to see this fall off just a little bit. Then as we get later into the evening, here's the southern mode of that threat beginning to develop here. This is more so towards about 11 o'clock Eastern time, which would be my time zone, so about 10 o'clock. And then these storms really will start to increase in intensity and coverage as we get past midnight. And then from that point, we do see a few storms with some updraft felicity here, some notable updraft felicity it looks like. So we'll have to see how things develop with that, but nonetheless here, those streaks do indicate pretty strong felicities and damaging wind potential most likely at this point. I'm still not very sold on a tornado threat, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Then again, the threat isn't zero, so let's make sure we're keeping an eye on that. But that's all I got for you guys in this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. Smash that like button, decimate that share button, and also if you're new, make sure you subscribe. That being said, this has been Metalhead Weatherman. Hope you guys have an awesome day, and take care.